According to Bioscholar's second, biogeochemical cycles, after the polar bear dies, it doesn't do much to the environment. There is not a lot of plants that grow in the Arctic unless they are underwater. Birds, like gulls, and in some places snowy owls, eventually eat up the polar bear after it dies. Everything they don't eat is usually preserved in the ice, and when an ice glacier shifts and melts, the polar bear remains may go into the ocean and be used to fertilize the plants. Polar bears are a great source of nitrogen, which can help the plants become healthier. This allows the fish to eat healthier food, which can raise their population. If the fish population raises, then the seals will eat the fish and their population will increase. Once that happens, there will finally be more food for the bears. Unfortunately, this only happens if a number of bears die. According to the National Wildlife Federation, the trophic cascade theory is when predators in a food web suppress the abundance, releasing the text trophic level from predation. In other words, effect of one trophic level flows up or down to more than one adjacent trophic level. The polar bear is on top of the food chain in the Arctic. They maintain a balance of nature by preventing the overpopulation of seals. Seals are polar's primary food. These seals mainly feed on smaller fish. Polar bears are mainly carnivore because they mainly depend on seals. Seals have a lot of protein, carbohydrates, and lipids that the polar bear needs. A polar bear's stomach can hold up to 50 to 20% of its own body weight. This mainly happens when a polar bear's energy demand is high. They eat about 2.2 kilograms or 4.4 pounds of food on average every day. Carbohydrates helps the cell's activity. With a lack of carbohydrates, the polar bear's cells cannot function properly. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy. All organisms need carbohydrates for basically everything. It is essential for the polar bears to have carbohydrates for a long trip across the Arctic for their hunting. Lipids are important for storing energy. They also make up the membrane of cells. Fats, oils, and waxes are common categories of lipids. As stated before, polar bears need a lot of fat to stay warm. Their fat that warms them up is 4 inches thick. Proteins is the most important part of any organism. They help the bear with controlling the rate of reactions and regulating the cell process. Ribosomes, Golgi apparatus, and endoplasmic reticulum are organelles in the cell that help the proteins in the cell and the rest of the body. Proteins are also important for transporting substance in and out of the cell and fighting diseases. Unfortunately, the polar bears aren't getting essential macromolecules they need in order to survive. As we stated earlier, less and less steels are available for the bears. When a polar bear is out trying to hunt for deer, they also have a way to retrieve energy. This is through cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, organisms use oxygen and glucose to make ATP or energy. The polar bear again needs all this energy in Arctic trips and warmth. According to the symbiotic relationships in the Tundra article I found online, every species is interdependent on one another in order to survive. This statement is absolutely true since every species is literally a part of some food chain. Many various symbiotic relationships can be found in the Arctic. Commensalism. The Arctic fox travels behind the polar bear and scavenges on the scraps of food. The polar bear is hardly affected and the fox benefits from the food. Mutualism. There is basically no animal that has a mutualism relationship with the polar bear. Arctic fox might be the only animal that can have this relation. Polar parasitism. Polar bears are susceptible in the parasitic worm Trichinella, which they contract by feeding on infected seals. Tarantula larvae incest is various parts of the polar bear's body, usually muscle tissue. Even enough larvae incest is one area, such as the heart, the tissue becomes severely damaged. In this the polar bear is harmed, whereas the tarantula is benefited. Predation. Polar bears prey on the ring-bearded seals in the environment. This is their main source of food. So polar bears find them at the top of the find themselves at the top of the food chain, and it increases their chances of survival. According to the article How Grizzlies Evolved into Polar Bears I found online, research shows that they might have evolved from a common bear. The one bear they are closest related to is a grizzly bear. Sometime in 100,000 to 250,000 years ago, grizzly bears were isolated by glaciers and perched on the ice. This was because most of the earth was covered on ice. The grizzly bear had to find a way to adapt in the cold weather. Evidence shows that the polar bear have evolved from the grizzly bears. Many of the organisms are similar. Their hearts, liver, and stomach are some of the many organs that have a homologous function. What has changed over the many years? Well, one that is an analogous is their intestines. The polar bear has a longer and wider intestine. This is due to the larger foods that they have consumed all at once. They also have larger lungs. This helps them to take in more oxygen. Polar bears need more energy than grizzly bears because they have to create more heat for their body. When looking at DNA, you can also see how related they are. According to the blast.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov website, comparing the cytochrome C shows that the polar bear and grizzly bears are related 99% of their protein. Also, the lengths of their DNA strands are exactly the same. This means that the DNA coding are identical. According to the Polar Bear and Climate Change article by the Action Bioscience Department I found online, polar bears' most common hunting method is called still hunting. The bear uses its excellent sense of smell to locate a seal breathing hole and crouches nearby in silence for the seal to appear. Polar bears are an apex predator who really only need to defend themselves against other bears and humans. They use their massive size, powerful claws, and equally powerful jaws and teeth when fighting and hunting. According to the Polar Bear International, new evidence suggests that the polar bear's ancestors diverged from polar bears and underwent a series of evolutionary changes in order to survive the harsh conditions of Arctic, adapting to a life of hunting seals and surviving extreme cold. Scientists have based new evidence on an analysis of inheritance genetic mix, so-called nuclear DNA, from both male and female polar bears and brown bears. With the shifting of polar ice caps and glaciers, the brown bear species native to that environment undergoing physical body changes to keep them warm in the brutally cold weather. Polar bears are marvels of evolution. To be able to live in cold Arctic environment, they developed 4 inches thick layer of fat and huge padded feet. Their broad paddle-like forepaws act like snowshoes for walking on ice, and they work as oars when swimming.